going to do a brief kind of glance at the agenda with you. We have made some kind of last minute changes. What we've done is taken my sharing and Lexi's sharing and just flip-flop them. So you can see on the agenda that after our opening welcome, we'll be doing the sustainability and capacity work with Lexi, and then we'll end our time together doing our nuts and bolts kind of information for you to get you through the end of the year. So I will now stop sharing and open it up to Lexi. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Elena. Can you hear me?
I can.
All righty, great. And then is it possible for you to pull up the PowerPoint? I want to make sure that I don't do anything that would mess with that.
Sure, give me just a minute.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you. We have folks who are still joining as we go along. So thank you for being ready on time. And I was one of those working on the time zone thing as well. So for those of you doing that, I was with you, and I'm happy that you're here and happy that we're all here as well. So let me know. I think I see your screen, Elena, so just let me know when I can. Actually, I'll just share my screen. That might be easier. How's that?
Okay.
All right. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Got it? Everybody good? Are you there, Elena?
I am. I can see it, and so I'm assuming everyone else can. Yes. Quiet
Okay.
group today.
Okay, that's great. Very good. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit about the ideas of sustainability, and Elena asked if we would spend some time there because that's really where you are. However, I do want to give some thought to this idea that stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, they're not really linear. So the graphic looks as though it's a linear process and that there's a little bit of overlapping. After doing this work for 17 years, opposing that we might put forward is that it's not linear, and that sometimes you are in the middle of implementing and then all of a sudden something shifts and you have to go back to the adopting and even the planning phase. For example, the assessment system. So most of you have been working very hard on putting in your screening assessments, your progress monitoring assessments, looking at diagnostic work in both reading, and then many of you are working on math. And so you may currently be in the stage 3 of implementing that work, implementing your comprehensive assessment system. And then let's say that the IRI, the early literacy measure changes, and that puts you right back into stage 1 or really even stage 2. So you then have a new assessment for a new part of your work. You have to learn again how to give it. You have to learn again how to enter the data if you need to, how to pull up the reports, how to understand the reports. Another example might be that many of you have gone from Ames Web to Ames Web Plus. So you may have been, are you there? Let me double check. Elena, I'm thinking maybe we might need to mute somewhere.
I see everybody's muted. I think it was just a momentary lapse.
Okay, great. So in implementing Ames Web, many of you are in stage 4 in terms of implementing that particular part of your screening system. And many of you went to Ames Web Plus. So with that shift, it took you back really to stage 2. You weren't sure how to give it again. I've worked with many of you in many schools across Idaho who weren't sure how to interpret the data. I was working in CUNA Middle School last week, and they had only been giving maze. Now they're giving the whole battery. So it was like a brand new part of RTI all over again. So I think that's a main consideration that Elena and I would like you to think about today, that this looks linear, but it absolutely is usually not linear in approach. Early on, at the very, very beginning of the grant, there was some exploration and some adopting of deciding that you wanted to, one, be a part of the grant, and two, be a part of refining, building, establishing your RTI system. Sometimes also in the middle of an implementation process, there's turnover and there's change. And so it feels like you're kind of back at stage one of deciding again that you want to do the work, or renewing or refreshing. Last week I was working with some folks in St. Mary's on their district leadership team. And there will be new members coming in to the district leadership team. And so there will need to be a refreshing and a transition and a renewing of why you are choosing to implement RTI, why it was adopted, and then purpose behind it. So although it looks like stage one, Elena, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Although it looks like you're in, that this is pretty concrete step, we decided we want to do it, boom, away we go. As people transition on your team, your district leadership team, a school leadership team, you loop back a little bit and you don't make a new decision. So for example, St. Mary's isn't going to make a new decision that yes, indeed, they are going to move their RTI forward. However, the looping back is really about why you decided to do it, why you made the choices that you did in terms of implementing RTI. I also wanted to give you a little bit of information that may help you with this step if you're going back and renewing with folks. So John Hattie's research with his meta-analysis has been about 15 years in coming. It's with the work of visible learning. It's a meta-analysis that has 300 kids involved, 70,000 experimental design studies. It's really seminal work in terms of what works in terms of student performance and student learning. And John Hattie rank ordered those strategies in his visible learning book. And actually RTI, so you're looking for a 0.40 effect size. With practices that have a 0.40 effect size, you can often expect about 2 years worth of growth. So that's kind of what you're looking for. RTI, response to intervention, has a 1.07 effect size, which means that if you do an amazing job with it, you should get improved student performance to a great degree. So part of step one in terms of renewing with folks of why you are implementing RTI, why you're building your system, why you have a district RTI team, is that research has shown that implementing RTI effectively brings great gains for kids when done well. There were 4 parts of RTI that were studied in these studies: universal screening, progress monitoring, core instruction, and intervention. Those were the 4 parts. Leadership and database decision-making hasn't yet been studied in this meta-analysis way. So as you are thinking about sustaining your system, renewing the commitment, the vision, the adoption of RTI as you have transition, it's also important to know the research base behind it so you can share that with folks. So I'm actually just going to stop. I've done quite a bit of talking for a minute. And Elena, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to ask if you would just go down the list and have folks just respond to those few things that I've shared so far. I talked fast and I talked a lot.
Definitely. And I know some of you have put in the chat pod that you don't have a mic, so I will let you type in and read your response.
Okay, great.
Top of the list, we'll start with Bobby. Just respond in terms of what do you see happening moving forward, and what might you need to renew as you think about sustaining? I
Maybe we
saw
could.
she unmuted, but we'll maybe having mic issues. We'll keep going. Cindy, I'll let you type a response in the chat pod, and I'll read that because I know you don't have audio. Katrina, anything you want to share in terms of where you might start when you're thinking about sustaining your efforts, things you might have to share, research you may need to bring back to the forefront with your teams and your district and school?
Yeah, and I'm through the phone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Post Falls, we are re-looking at our universal screener for comprehension and trying to get something that is just going to be more concise than Maze. We're just not feeling like that's getting us the people that we need. And so that's one thing that we are struggling with right now. And then really doing that early warning systems. Back in when we first started, we were all about early warning systems, but we didn't have enough middle school and high school people on our team to make it work. Yep. We have those people on our team that can help put that in place.
Excellent. So Katrina, you may have to then go back and for folks who were coming into those teams, as you add to them, you may have to go back and talk about why you decided you wanted to implement an early warning system, why you wanted to enhance your comprehension screening measures so that folks who come in to your expanded group have an understanding of that base behind it rather than just moving forward. So yeah, very good. Good thinking there.
Thanks. And Sarah in Highland, thoughts from you? Oh, I'm seeing lots of folks type in the chat pod, so I'll read some of those responses. Cindy in Buell said that their sustainability will depend on how effective the group leadership is when adding additional team members.
Yes.
We will always have the need to review where we've been and to share our process for going forward. We will need to always be open to new ideas and opportunities as well.
Yes, can I speak to that for a minute, Elena?
Sure.
That's right. As you go back and loop back in to give that history and that perspective, I love that comment that it isn't so that folks can come in and do things the way you've always done them. It is so that they can come in and understand a base of why you did some of the things you did, as well as then open up to their contribution. So really, really great point. That step number one for that work is not really about here's how we do it, come on into the team and get in line. So nice point there. Good for you.
And CUNA said that we are relooking at our assessment system, universal screening, progress monitoring, and diagnostics. We're also in the process of improving our alignment of curriculum to interventions to assessments, as well as bringing in the high school, and that's going well.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne.
Sherry, would you like to share?
Sure, I'd like to share. We're really looking at our RTI district team. What we have now is we have our core team from the grant, and we're also looking, we also have team members from each school, but they're varied positions. Some have teachers, some have counselors. We're looking more towards our instructional coaches being a part of that team. We kind of feel like the message isn't getting out to where it needs to go. So that's something that we're looking at. We definitely realize the importance of RTI and don't want to lose any of the gains we've made, and we want to move forward, work on some data, not just looking at it, but really digging in and understanding data better. Those are some of the directions that we feel like we're headed right away in our district.
Great, Sherry.
And Sherilyn in Snake River wrote that our sustainability challenge is committing the time for the RTI and MTSS meetings and continuing to focus on the why. Through a lot of transitions means we need to train new people often. Also curriculum alignment, identifying essential standards, and aligning assignments to standards.
Yeah, lots of work. Lots of work. And I think that's kind of the overarching thought that I would like to have us consider is that this is really a cycle. So if you're ready, Elena, may I go to the next slide? Or is there
Absolutely.
anyone else there who's responded that you think
I
should
don't see anyone else in the chat pod. Plumber Worley, anything to add? Or Blackfoot has recently joined, if they'd
Okay.
have anything to add.
Okay.
I don't hear anything. Go ahead and move on.
Okay, great. So let me get back here. So most of you are in stage 3 with your implementation of the RTI framework. And so that stage is really just like you have all described, bringing all of your components together. And it's almost as though you have several different plates in front of you and you are balancing all of them at a time. So you may move over here and support the assessment piece of RTI, and then you turn and you're over here and you're like, oh, the curriculum side of RTI. For example, some of you are implementing new math materials, and so you're like, oh, that math plate needs to be spinning a little bit more, and then you're like, oh, using data. We have not gone as far as we would like to in terms of using data. And so the whole job of the RTI team is really to always be spinning and holding and moving the plates that represent all of the components of RTI. And the reason that you do that in that way is so that those folks who are carrying out the work get some time and attention and support and integration from the district team to the actual implementation of the work in the schools. And that eventually, with that continued support, spinning, attending to the assessment system, the curriculum, the instructional system, the leadership system, the data system, those are all a part. And that as you work with that, then the schools actually get continued support. They may not get the exact support of all of the pieces at the same time. When we listen to you share today, however, I can hear that you're saying, right now we're working on our assessment system and we've had to refine that again, or we're looking at some things we don't have, or we just have some new curriculum and we're working on actually having that implemented. So bullet number 3, you may have some things that are just being put in place now with RTI, and your whole goal is that they get implemented well. If you have a new set of math materials and you have 7 schools in your district and only 2 of the schools are using those math materials for core instruction, you have a big plate to be spinning there because that's a major part of the work. So as you step into stage 3, think of it like holding up and spinning the plates, and together as a team, it takes each of you to be able to do that. So that the work in the field, in the schools, actually is supported and taking place. Stage 4 is continuously improving. And that is that you are looking at some innovations. You are evaluating whether or not your system and your work has actually is actually on track to the degree you want it to be. And then you refine those practices, improve those practices so that kids are getting even more and more better student learning. Bullet number 2 is really a bullet for district leads and district leadership teams to ensure that the RTI framework remains relevant. A few years ago, you all worked very hard on putting some things in place in terms of your RTI framework in a handbook, in a manual, on the website. You were looking at building that guidance document for your district so that you could really have something that holds and stands. And you've probably noticed that you need to update it and that it is ever changing. And as we look at research that is continuing to come in, we then adjust that RTI framework to match that research I'm thinking, I guess, of math and with John Hattie's visible work in mathematics, and that there are about 5 practices that have really high effect size. One of them is using solved problems to support student learning. Another is a dialogic approach where kids are talking about math. And so there may be some things in your core instruction for math that needs to be updated, that needs to be made relevant. So another concept this morning is that the document, the website, the manual, the guidance document, those things are in continuous need of updating and continuous improvement. And so we'd be really interested in how have you been addressing this? Because there's the balance of, here we have so much work to do and support our schools in their implementation, and we need our standardization documents, those things that are true for all in RTI, to be updated and relevant. And that's a hard balance, sometimes in terms of time. So we would love to hear, how have you been ensuring that your RTI framework is relevant, it's been updated based on research, that your documentation it has been attended to, your processes as well. So either type in the chat box and or Elena, will you start the sharing of how folks have been working on that so far?
Yes, and I typed the question into the chat pod as you said it, as requested previously.
Thank you.
I will read responses as they come into the chat pod, and rather than going down the list, I'd love for folks to just chime in to share with us, you know, kind of that balance that you found or strategies you're using to help you balance between work and creating something sustainable, those documents that folks often want and that we have to continually update. Don't all jump in at once. Suzanne said,
hi, this is Janie.
Oh, please share. Welcome.
We have our handbook, which we made a couple years ago through the grant, but we, just as she said, notice we have to continually update, change things in and out. But that's been a good thing, that based on data, we can fix things here and there. And then our big thing you also mentioned was, okay, we have the data now, what do we do with it? So we're having a Spring Institute for all of our teams. We have a RTI team at each school. We'll bring them all together and in April, and we created a data RTI handbook now, so we're going to go through that in the spring.
Excellent. So you're bringing in the school teams from your district and providing them an opportunity. Is it a full day?
It'll be half a day.
Okay. Providing them a half a day of protected, insulated time where they can then learn and improve. So it's really on bullet number 1, improve your practices of using data. And you're going to take that specific piece and refine it, improve it, so that then when folks go back and lead their schools, they can be doing a better job with that piece of using data than they have in the past.
Correct. Yeah. And the teams have appreciated that we've done this now a couple times, bringing them all together so then they can, like you say, go back to their individual schools and work on those things. So it's worked out really nice.
Excellent. What a gift that you are giving them for that protected time. What a gift you're giving them to have diagnosed that using data is a place where you could improve. And what a gift that you are giving them a structured, supportive place to do that work so that they could perfect their own skills. Sometimes leadership teams don't get very much time to perfect their own skills or pull out a piece of RTI and get really good at it and then put it back into the system. So that is a very thoughtful and supportive gift in a way to be sustainable. That's excellent. Good for you. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
And several people have shared in the chat pod around the more process-oriented.
Okay.
Puna said they're moving their MTSS website resources into Schoology and moving our website toward more parent-friendly, so sharing of information.
Great.
Snake River said sharing the documents on a Google Drive has made it easier to collaborate
Great.
and update regularly. Highland, we use Google Docs, so everything is in one place. Our data goes into mileposts, so it's easy to find and in one place. Snake River also said they just reviewed winter data, similar to what Jody and Blackfoot was talking about, and it was kind of a big wake-up call for everyone going back to that data piece. Post Fall shared, we use our MTSS website that houses all of our documents and training resources. We update that regularly, send out notes after meetings to admin team to notify them of changes, and that any work from the district MTSS team goes to admin for review and feedback before it goes live to the whole district. It really sounds like a lot of great processes are in place and procedures.
Absolutely right. I remember a few years ago, everybody, when we were beginning to do the work with this grant, and that's not where you were. That's absolutely not where you were. So that sharing is wonderful. I'm going to give a minute or two. Is there anyone who would like to ask one of your colleagues a question? So Jody shared about their time where they pull in their schools and they do kind of an institute. Some of you shared about Google Docs and Google Drive to be able to automatically update. Some of you talked about your district website. So is there anyone who would like to ask one of their colleagues a question about that to kind of further get information? I'll give you a minute if that's what you'd like to do.
And we've had 2 other districts share out. Let me add that into the conversation to hopefully spark some more questions.
Great.
Buell said that as a district, they've struggled to make sure that guidance document is fair and applicable across the grade levels. What types of assessment we use at the elementary level are not necessarily the same at the high school level. So we've been striving to keep a document that can be used across the grade levels. We've been adapting the way to get our forms filled out as well, and MTSS data is also being put into milepost. Plummer Worley also shared we have weekly pod meetings to review the data of our intervention groups and make instructional changes as necessary. We've worked with Shelby to create a collaboration agenda so we can work effectively. So some other strategies and things folks are doing.
Nice, nice. So I'll give just maybe 15 seconds or so if somebody would like to ask their colleagues a question about anything shared.
This is Sherry. I've got a question on the milepost. I'm wondering if anyone puts their RTI plans into milepost, or is that mostly just a place to keep the data for like on the assessments?
So Sherry, you mean a plan that's written for a student?
Correct. An individual student plan.
Okay, great. So if you would like to answer Sherry with your microphone, please do. And if you can type in an answer, that would be great too. Thanks for the question, Sherry.
Sherry, this is Jody Togiai from Blackfoot. We put all of our individual plans into milepost.
Thanks, Jody. We're working that way, and we hope it's successful. Does that work well for your district?
Yes, it's been a success to have our forms along with what's available with the data in milepost to have them all in the same place.
Okay, thanks.
Other folks are sharing similarly. Highland said we put our RTI plans into milepost. Post Fall said the same thing. We put our plans in RTI and mileposts. And Buell said the same thing. We have put some RTI plans in mileposts.
And this is Shelley from Gooding. We also put ours into milepost.
There you go, Sherry. Lots of good folks that you could draw upon as collegial resources as you do your work.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions you would like to ask one another? Jody, I have a question actually.
Okay.
Jody, may I ask a little bit on your institute that you're getting ready to do? What kinds of things are you going to do with your leadership teams in terms of data? Will you look at district data? Will you give them processes to look at their own data? What will that institute look like that's coming up?
Yeah, Yes, we're pulling both individual schools and then district-wide, kind of looking at where we started this fall and where we've come this spring. And the admin are going to take part and share how each of, who's in charge of putting the data into Milepost, how that data gets put in there so that they will share out. So we know some schools are doing it differently or better than others, and we just wanted them all to share so they all had an idea. And we wanted to come from the admin because they're in charge of each of their own teams. Yeah. Shelby's coming down to talk about data on that day as well. And Angie Godfrey from the Idaho Numeracy Project is coming in as well, because we want to roll out some things with math.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to go back to that idea of Milepost for a minute, and that each school does it a little bit differently. So that's a really important consideration in all of you leading RTI. So there's this thing called bounding, and the district's job is to bound the work like painting the lines on the highway. So you paint 2 white lines and you say, here's really the boundary. So you can drive anywhere. So this road is meant for travel. And in order to be organized and systematic, I'm going to put a line down the middle, and we're going to go this direction when we're heading out, and we're going to go this direction when we're heading in. So this is the bounding of RTI. For example, everyone gives the universal screening measure. That's a bounding. Those are white lines. And in elementary, it looks like this. And on secondary, some of you mentioned that, it looks like this. And these are the ways we're going to head down the line. There's the way you go about that, there's a little bit, whether you drive a Camaro, whether you drive a Cadillac down that road or a semi-truck, those things are up to you. However, here's the bounding of the district. And then bringing folks together, and within that bounding, like you said, Jody, have them share. Here's how we do it. Here's how we do it. Here's how we do it. And we are all within the bounding, and yet we all have different ways at our school in which we kind of go about getting that work done. Does that kind of match what you're thinking about, Jody, in the work?
Yes, correct. We wanted to, yeah, because we've given the handbook. They know the different, the framework, but again, it's done a little bit differently here or there, but as long as it's getting done is the main thing. And so we wanted them each to share out how they get that into Milepost, what they do at their own meetings, that kind of thing.
Excellent. So there's a polarity that's always going to happen between the district and school implementation. So district implementation wants it to be standardized, wants everyone to do the work in the same way because that's consistent, easier to see. And school would like some autonomy within their context. And that polarity is always going to be present and never, ever going to go away. So a polarity can be managed, but it can't actually be solved. And the tension between the district and the school implementation is a polarity. And so a nice way to approach it in terms of leading is as Jody was sharing. Here's what needs to happen. These are the things that have to get done. And then how you go about them, here's your bounding. So before we transition, any thoughts or comments about that idea of bounding and that idea of polarities between standardized and customized implementation in the context? Anything typed in, Elena?
No, nothing typed in around that topic. CUNA did share in the chat pod that they have a district data calendar that has a process that it follows. Their MTSS leadership team looks at the data, then they share with principals and admin, and then principals share with staff. And that they're going to hold a meeting in May to review the data to see if they've met their goals, set new goals, and share what works for each building. So around the same vein of polarity in terms of district and schools.
Excellent. So Suzanne, I don't know if you have a microphone, but can you, and I know that you are really running that cycle of the district looking at the data. I think you look at it each time you gather together for your district team meeting. Can you just type a little bit more specifically about what data and how frequent the district leadership team looks at that data? And I don't know if you have a microphone, Suzanne, but if you don't, if you wouldn't mind typing it in.
Lexi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can.
Okay. Our district data calendar has multiple, a variety of different types of data that we look at. We look, fall, winter, spring at that, the universal screening. We have go on data that we're looking at, graduation rates. There's 1 month that we're specifically looking at attendance rates, and so we're looking at a district look, and then also from a specific school look, so that we can identify schools that might need additional support in specific areas. Those are the kinds of things that we do. And we meet at our admin meeting and share those things, and then that information is also shared by our superintendent with our school board. And so we're starting to become very cyclic of looking at the data in different things. And so advanced learner data and our different subpopulations, just a lot of different ones at different times of the year.
Excellent. And do you have that on a paper or I know you have it on your calendar, but is there anything that you could share with the rest of the group on how you've mapped out what you're going to look at each month?
That data calendar, yeah, we have that data calendar self-contained that we can share.
That would be great. Thank you. So those are some really great examples from all of you about really bullet number 1 and bullet number 2. And doing those two things of bullet number 1 and bullet number 2 gets you bullet number 3. If you don't do bullet number 1 and bullet 2, number 3 doesn't happen. And so sometimes people get this big picture of sustainability, and we need to get this whole we need to put a really big, huge document in place. And actually, if you are working on number 1 and number 2 on a monthly basis, number 3 happens. And so sustainability is a pretty organic process. It's not really a phase. We're going to be sustainable. It's more about being continuously improving on bullet number 1 and bullet number 2. So really nice sharing, everybody. Good work. So I'm actually going to skip this slide because many of you have already talked about areas in your district where you have been working on keeping things continuously improving. So here we did want you to see a couple of ineffective strategies so that you have a contrast to what would be effective. An ineffective strategy would be using only one method to support implementation, meaning that you only disseminated information. That by and large your district team is about getting information out to your school teams. Or if you only did professional development, or if you only put policies, regulations, support, or if you only funded. So actually, all of these things need to be put in place rather than just using one. And you may be heavier in one more than the other. As I listened to you all, though, I'm hearing that you have, you're understanding that you work on several of these strategies at one time. So Jody's example of bringing in the teams for their data institute, they will receive information. They will receive some training in professional development. The policies or regulations will probably be adjusted based on looking at data. And the funding is going to be allocated for those teams to come in and learn. So that's a good example where all of those approaches are being used in that given piece of implementation. So an ineffective strategy would be if you were working or perfecting one of these pieces and only did one of them. Let me go back. I thought there were some. Yeah, all right. So that's that. I guess we'll just have one ineffective strategy. I thought I had another one with it. So let's talk then, what are the effective strategies? How do we use a combination of them to be able to continuously improve our work? Staff selection is always important, even at the school level, with the paraeducators, with teachers, with principals, at the district level, with your district leadership team. Choosing the right people to lead the implementation work is always one of your most prime strategies for doing good work. And then being sure that whatever layer of the organization you are working with, that they actually have the training they need to get their work done. Ongoing coaching. This is a place where I'm guessing that many of you are feeling the need. So you have your systems in place, you have your structures in place, and yet some of your schools aren't quite there yet. And that's usually an indication that they need some ongoing coaching. We'll talk about that in a second. And then evaluating your system, and around you go. So let's go to the training piece for a minute, whether it's pre-service or it's in-service, which is for most of you. That your training components would be that people would have really good knowledge of the program and practices. For example, a couple of you have brand new math programs. Some of you adopted them last year, some of you adopted them this year, and one of your main jobs with training in that area is that your teachers would really have a strong knowledge of the program and the practices, and that way they can demonstrate the key skills that students need for them to be able to do well. So there's one thing to know the program, then there's another for them to be able to demonstrate the skills within that program, and then to do that, you offer them opportunities, professional learning opportunities to practice those skills and receive feedback from coaches and or their peers. And training itself actually doesn't guarantee a change in behavior. Oftentimes we need ongoing coaching. Many of you have instructional coaches in your building. And let's look at bullet number 2 for a minute. Being sure that the coaching work, for an example, Shelby was just in a district last week and they were working with the interims. And so Shelby came in and worked with all the instructional coaches for elementary and middle school to be able to provide them support and ways that they could take that interim data back to the schools, ways that they could help their schools become better at implementing the interim assessments with ISAT to be able to use them well. So Shelby was doing some teaching and reinforcing those practices. And then the coaches will take those interim assessments and look at the data with their teachers and provide feedback to teachers on where instructional adjustments could be made. And then while doing that, there are usually big shifts in identity, which we have talked about before: identity, confidence, competence. And so back up here, providing training is the first step so that people know what you're looking for and that they can get a little practice with the skills and get some feedback, and then needing some ongoing coaching. So I'm sorry to keep going back to Jody's example. It just lends itself to some of the slides that I'm working with. So Jody, you're bringing those professional learning opportunities and coaching opportunities kind of together, my guess is, and then you'll provide some support as they go back to their schools. Is that correct?
Correct. And we have instructional coaches as well, so they will be part of the institute to go back to their schools and help reinforce and work with the teams.
Excellent. Excellent. So these two pieces of effective practices go hand in hand. And then finally, that you should be looking at these 3 types of fidelity. All of the prerequisites in place so that you can actually carry out your implementation. Staff, teacher, facilities, assessments, are all those base pieces in place. And then there's compliance, meaning to what degree do the staff use the evidence-based program. So if you have, let's say you have the Eureka or Engage New York, and you have put it in place for 6 of your elementary schools and only 2 of them are using it, that's a place where you would work. You wouldn't use necessarily compliant language, but you would know, we're not actually where we should be, because when we look at core instruction on the Fidelity implementation rubric, we only have 2 of the 6 schools even implementing our core program for math. And then finally, do the folks that we're working with have the confidence, the level of skill to carry out the work, and is that what we see when we are spending time looking at the Fidelity? So we've talked about Fidelity in the past. That's what the Fidelity rubric is for, to help you self-assess, help you look at the components, help you shore up as you go along. And that would be a part of sustainability long when the grant was over. That the Fidelity implementation rubric would be a part of what you would talk about fall, winter, spring, just like you normally do. You would calibrate it with yourselves as a team, and that Fidelity implementation rubric would go forward long after the grant were gone, because it helps you actually keep on track with looking at your Fidelity implementation. So this is really the last slide. I love this middle part of letting it happen, helping it happen, making it happen. And this is just a normal part of the process at first as well. At first you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure what we should be doing. And then you get better and you're like, all right, we're going to get in there and help it happen. And then sometimes we actually bail at the yellow box. If we don't see all of the effects we're looking for right away, we actually just step back and go, yeah, it's just not working. And what the research says, we should actually step forward, step into it and say, okay, how can we ensure making it happen is kind of bold. How can we ensure that it's happening so that all kids get the benefit of that 1.07 effect size that John Hattie speaks about when RTI is implemented well? So I think, Elena, let's just do maybe a quick round robin or a type in of just some thoughts and things that were triggered today, just based on this little bit of sustainability.
Sounds great. I also wanted to share, we've kind of talked about Blackfoot's example, and Suzanne put an example of kind of the training and coaching they're doing in CUNA. I'll read.
Great.
She said, it's been very helpful to bring our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventionists together for collaboration and training monthly. We do this during our early out day. We also do this with our Para Academy, and we have had very effective training this year implementing our new math curriculum by using a train-the-trainer approach. Our coaches provide individualized training and support for teachers.
Excellent. Thank you, Suzanne, for adding that systems work in that you've been doing. Great.
So if anyone has other sharing or thoughts moving forward in terms of thinking about things that are in place that you're doing that you need to continue to support making them happen, please type in the chat pod or share with the group on phone or computer.
And while you're doing that, there's one more thing I guess I would like to say. The METIS coaches, our job is to help you with the yellow box and the green box. That's our job. That's why we're here, and that's where we get. That's our purpose. So, if you are finding that you're in the yellow box on some things, we have just a few more months where we get the opportunity to work alongside one another. And so, whether it's Dean, Jacqueline, Shelby, or myself, if you have some places where you've been in the yellow box and you really want to transition to the green box, those are some places where you could say, I think we need some technical assistance here. Several of you mentioned that Shelby's going to come in and do some work with you soon. And those are probably areas where you're transitioning from the yellow to the green box. And so I just wanted just a gentle offer as well that we have a few months. We have rest of March, April, May, and probably, I don't know if you're in school, but even some support into June if that were to be structurally possible for you all. So we have March, April, May, and June where we can continue to help you transition and be of assistance in the yellow to the green box as well. And there's still time to be able to access that work. I don't know if you'd say anything else about that, Elena.
Interesting that you should kind of bring that up. I had a note to bring that back full circle when I started my portion, and just encouraging you to really think about what's been shared today, and in terms of that organic sustainability happening, what you might need to get that happening, or if it's not happening, conversations about what you could change moving forward to make that happen. And that would be what I would add.
Okay, thanks. Anything typed in the box that we could read?
We have a couple comments. Katrina said it's good to remember that it's a continual process and not everyone is at the same place.
Yes.
And I like the idea of train the trainer so we can help our newer schools make it happen. Jody said, I would love to have these kinds of meetings next year as RTI leads and continue to share, ask questions, and maybe do some training workshops or institutes together next year. I will support that 125%. Just in my role at the State Department as the MTSS coordinator, aside from the work that I do with the grant, I would love to take all of your hard work and continue supporting you at the state level in keeping RTI going in our state.
Excellent.
Cindy said, I've been reading a book called Switch that focuses on how to make changes. One of the biggest impacts it has had on me is the fact that we need to look to the positive to make changes. I love the idea that the last slide has the yellow section where we are needing to get in there and push ourselves. If we're positive in our desire to make changes, we'll be able to affect them.
Nice, Cindy. And that's a great book. It's a great book. Good mindset shifter, right? Excellent. Any others, Elena?
No, that's all I'm seeing.
All right. So I am actually going to stop sharing my screen. And I think my video is on. I am actually going to transition and step away for a little bit. And I will catch up with Elena on the good work that you do in this next little bit together. It's been a privilege, as always, to spend time with you. It's my honor. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you. All of us are looking forward to seeing all of you in May and hearing about all of the good work you're doing in between now and there. So nice work, everybody. Really a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank you, Lexi, as many are also echoing in the chat pod.
Yeah, welcome. All right, I'm going to step aside, Elena.
Great, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
So we have about another hour. We shouldn't take our whole hour. I'm hoping to get through kind of the nuts and bolts piece in about 30 minutes. Please ask questions, type into the chat pod. I would like to give you as much clarity for the next few months' activities as we really look at collecting the data and closing out our grant that I possibly can. So any and all questions, just jump in and ask or type in the chat pod as I'm kind of going through. The first thing that I wanted to share with you, and I hope you have seen this, I've been sending it in monthly newsletters out to all of you. This is the calendar that represents the data dates that each of you gave me as the lead for your district. And the fall, as you thought about when you might collect the required data. I completely understand these dates are not set in stone, that really to set spring dates in the fall, things change. You know, we work in schools, so we have to expect that. But as much as possible, please review this, look at the dates that you set, think about if they are still achievable, if you need to adjust them, getting them on your calendar so you're kind of cognizantly aware of the data that needs to be collected. Questions, concerns about the calendar, I can send it again today so you have it at your fingertips. The dates, thank you, Carrie. In the chat pod, Carrie posted the link. This is also linked on the Training Clearinghouse if you want to pull it up at any time. As changes are made, we'll also update it there so you'll have the most current in front of you. The next piece that I wanted to share, when we think about the dates set for data collection. Here is kind of a snapshot. This is section 9 from our grant implementation guide. This is all of the data that we collect and then utilize to report back to OSEP for our SPIDIG funding. So as you know, our Fidelity implementation rubric at the very top is completed in the spring. I wanted to talk about that in terms of protocol. The expectation around the Fidelity implementation rubric, as you kind of see represented in the bullets, is that your coach will complete the rubric on their own. Your school team will also complete the rubric together as a team. Then there will be a coming together of the coach and your team, both with a completed rubric where you can discuss and calibrate your scores together. That's the process that's been set up and is required by OSEP when we report our performance data on the 1st. So I would encourage you to think through when your school teams might take the time to complete that rubric together. I've had a meeting with all of the coaches to ensure that they are also following that protocol and procedure. Make a note for yourself. The FIR rubrics are due by May 1st. So those need to be completed by teams, calibrated with the coach, and submitted back to myself by May 1st. Questions around the Fidelity implementation rubric collection? I don't hear anything. Yes, good question, Suzanne. Those are just for the schools. The grant was set up to collect Fidelity implementation data at the school level. So district teams do not do the rubric, school teams do. The next piece you'll see on here is the leadership team survey. Oh, let me address Anna's question. Thank you, Anna. And I had a note to address that too. The FIR will be done by all grant schools. And if your district has chosen to use your METIS coach to coach a sister school, that school will also be responsible for completing a rubric. So the simple way to think about it is any school that has been involved with the grant or is receiving coaching from a METIS coach will need to submit a completed FIR by May 1st. If you need clarity around which schools in your district that might be, I'm happy to send you that information, shoot me an email, and I'll respond right back to you. Thank you for the question, Anna. The next piece of data, the leadership team survey, you can see by the bullets, this is an individually completed survey that will be sent out via electronic link to all the members of the district team. So we've switched from the FIR being a school team to the leadership team survey being the district team. Each member will complete it individually and then we'll compile those results. That link will be sent out to you. Let me make sure I get my date correct. On Monday, April 17th, that link will be emailed from myself for individual team members to complete. The parent involvement survey. Let me bring up a separate document. This went out just very recently, last week in fact, and I created kind of a cheat sheet for you. I know this survey can be fairly confusing because we're collecting it at multiple levels. We have a parent RTI survey that parents fill out. Then we have a district parent RTI survey. So let me just clarify. These are some tips for you sending parent surveys if you're looking to increase your return rate. To clarify here, the electronic link and the hard copies of the parent survey were sent out to you on February 27th for you to think about distribution, how you want to get those to your schools to be filled out. The only surveys that have to be returned back to myself and the evaluator are surveys from grant schools. So any school that has been a part of the grant that will do the parent surveys that will be sent back to me. If you have other schools in your district, sister schools, or others that also want to do the parent survey, that is fantastic. You're welcome to also send those in, and as time allows, we can get those results and add them to your data that we share back. But for required parent surveys, we just need those from grant schools. A separate link was then sent out for the district team parent survey on Friday. That link went to district team members to fill out to see if the perspectives between the district team members and the parents coincide. Questions or clarifications around parent surveys? Suzanne, I see you had a question. Will the leadership team survey go to all team members or will it come to the lead? It will go to individual team members. Good question. As did the parent RTI district survey. That went to individual team members on Friday as well. That covers the parent survey at the district and parent level. The next piece is the coaching survey. The coaching survey is the very last piece of data that we typically collect in our SPDIG here. This survey serves to tell us how you think your METIS coach did. So this survey, again, like the leadership team survey, will be sent to individuals. But this survey, the coaching survey, will go to both the district team members and the school team members. The audience for this, the responses we're trying to capture are from anyone who received coaching from a METIS coach. We want to know, how did METIS do? Were your needs met? All types of those things. So the coaching survey will be sent on Monday, April 24th to all the members of the district team and the school teams, including any and all teams at sister schools because they received coaching. Sarah, I see your comment. I will resend the parent survey email to you. And the leadership team survey submission, good question. Typically, we leave the surveys open for a minimum of 2 weeks. We've left them in the past open for as long as a month, although we prefer the 2-week window. So the leadership team survey will be sent on Monday, April 17th. 2 weeks later, we would hope that it would be completed by all parties, and that would close it then on Friday, May 5th. So 2-week window on those surveys. The coaching observation checklist here, you get one thing on this paper you don't have to worry about. That's my responsibility, and those are, that's what I do with the recordings that you make with your METIS coaches. So really here, the only thing you're doing is letting METIS record a coaching session with a team. They then send to me and I complete that checklist. The virtual coaching feedback form, that was sent in November and has already been collected once this year. The goal was to collect it in November and February. We've since changed that to April. You can see on here, because of all the cancellations to coaching that happened in January, we felt like asking you to tell us how your virtual coaching went when most sessions were canceled wouldn't give us the best data. So that link will now be sent on April 3rd. That goes to principals and the lead, with the intention being the lead would fill that out with the district team and principals would fill it out with their school team. That's a team completed survey to tell us how virtual coaching is going for your school or district. Last but not least on our data collection schedule is calibration visit documentation. Thank you so much to all of you who have already submitted this and been so timely in doing so. This documentation is what is collected at the debrief calibration visit, typically collected by the host team and sent back to me, sign-in sheets from both teams, and then the evaluation from both teams. I've requested that it be sent within 2 weeks of the visits. So if you have a pending calibration visit, and I believe that's just 2 districts left, please send that documentation after your visit. Here's another snapshot for you. If you prefer an Excel type of version of data, dates, this is the same as the PDF calendar that I showed a few minutes ago, just a different way of looking at it. Dates that were district chosen to complete the various pieces of data for the SPDIG this year. Questions, comments about data collection? I don't hear anything and I don't see anything. Just watching the chat pod. You should already have this, all of the documents that I've shown you, but I'm happy to put them into an email for you again. The parent tip sheet, the data collection information, the spreadsheet, and the PDF calendar. I can send them again so that they're, like I said, kind of at your fingertips. Other questions, clarifications? The one last thing that was on the agenda that I wasn't sure we'd have time for today, but we do, is this idea of an exit survey. What I will be putting together and sending out to you as the lead in probably early May is a survey with questions around your whole kind of 5-year experience in the grant. This is not anything that we're going to report to OSEP or use for reporting. What we want to do is get your feedback and find out what worked really well for you in this grant, what didn't work so well. Were there components that you thought were more effective, less effective? We have noticed in the last 2 years kind of a drop in number of coaching hours that districts are receiving and using. So there'll be some questions around what things maybe are getting in the way. I know I've already gotten some feedback around, well, we have, this initiative and that initiative, and we just don't have enough hours in the day, or substitute issues, all kinds of things. So I would really encourage you, when you get this survey, make a note on your calendar that when it comes, please take 10 minutes of your time and really give some honest feedback. It will help me as I craft our next SPDIG grant application to make some of the changes that will support districts and schools better as we do the work. I want to make sure that the processes that we're putting in place and the things that we're writing into our next 5-year grant application are things that have been successful within this grant. So please be very honest. I won't ask for your name. I won't ask for your district. It will be an anonymous survey to just get some feedback and see how we might make the next grant cycle and grant application even better. And that is all I had. If there are any other questions, comments, please speak up or type into the chat pod. And I hope that everyone has a fantastic week. Thank you so much for joining me on a Monday morning. I know we're all getting back to the office and have things to get going for the week, so I thank you for your time.